Silver Institute, their numbers, they're expecting a 318 million ounce deficit in silver this year between the demand and the shutdowns in the mines. So I'm curious, as one of the people who's going to be counted on to fill that void, where is that silver going to come from?
You know, and that's really the big argument for higher silver prices.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics, and excited to have a new guest to the show, but a company that I know many of you are familiar with, which is Fortuna Silver. And joining me is Jorge Ganoza, the president, CEO, and director of Fortuna, who obviously has a lot of insight to things that are going on in the mining side of the silver industry. So Jorge, it's a pleasure to have you on here today. And how is everything going with you?
Good afternoon, Chris, and delighted to be in your show.
Well, it's great to have you here. It's certainly been an interesting year. We were introduced to the idea of COVID, obviously had a lot of implications on the mining industry, a lot of supply shut down. Although before we even get into any of that, perhaps could you let us know a bit about your background? And I know you have extensive mining experience and how you ended up with Fortuna, why silver, and where all that came from.
Sure. By way of background, I am a geological engineer, so I come to the industry from the technical side. I've been in mining all of my professional career. And beyond that, I am a Peruvian national, educated here in the US. And my family has been involved in the mining industry in Peru and other parts of the Americas for generations, actually. I'm the fourth generation. My great-grandfather was a mining engineer, and my family has owned and operated mines in Peru, basically. So it runs in the family. We're four brothers, and three of the four are mine engineers, geologists, quite active in the business, right? So it's a family endeavor, if you will.
Yeah,
how we came about Fortuna. Fortuna is an initiative that we put together back in 2004 with two associates. And just to refresh everybody's memory, silver was trading at the time at around $3.50 per ounce. No?
Yep.
And we just thought that couldn't hold for long. And, we embarked in this initiative to acquire assets that could be mining assets that could be brought into production relatively quickly. And what better places than Peru and Mexico to look for such assets? Two of the countries that historically have ranked among the 2-3 largest silver producers in the world. So, but $3.50, those are prices that we cannot even imagine these days, right?
Yeah, it's incredible when you think about what's happened to the price of silver over that time. And again, it's easy for people who are investing or trading to just focus on the price and how things shake out. But I thought it'd be great if you could let folks know, especially with a lot of people new to mining, new to how this works, what does a company have to do to handle when silver is $3.50, $50, $35, then goes back below $20? How do you prepare for that and still run a business functionally?
I think that's a great point to touch on, particularly at a time like this, when we are in what's is being established or consolidating as a robust bull market, right? Because from the perspective of running the business, we have to be cognizant that this is a cyclical industry. We are exposed to the swings in metal prices in an industry where, of course, we do not control the price of our products, right? These are commodities that we all know. So from our perspective, we need to really focus on assets that work in every market. What we need to provide our investors are strong call options on the metal. And what do I mean by that? Most mines will operate fine at $25. Some will make a lot of money, others not so much. But I cannot conceive mines that do not work and deliver with silver at $25 per ounce. But silver will come back down. I don't know when, but it will come back down. Or if we have a conviction that silver will go even higher, what we need are assets that can perform in pretty much any price environment. And that is what provides the optionality to the investor. If we're all excited about silver at $25 today, but only in March, silver traded at $14. Look at that volatility. No, look at that type of volatility. We don't remember what happened in March, but in March, silver was trading at $14, even below $14 for some weeks.
Learn that.
So we need to have assets that can thrive with $13 silver or $9 silver. No, we need to focus, as captains of industry, we need to focus on those type of assets, right? And through focusing on that is that we can provide strong optionality to our investors. No? Yeah.
Yeah, which now on one hand sounds great, although easier said than done. Although as someone who has successfully done that, how do you position a company to handle that?
Well, you have to be very disciplined through your growth strategy, right? This is a beautiful business because the amount of value you can create through discovery is immense, right? So, but exploration and the discovery process, there is a high degree of uncertainty, of course, and it takes time, right? So you have to be committed to exploration and be persistent and be smart about how you spend your exploration dollars. And second, when you embark on M&A, you need to be disciplined as well, right? You need to really focus on assets where you see further exploration potential and assets that can perform. We tend to lose discipline in bull markets as miners, as industry leaders. We tend to lose discipline in bull markets. And you cannot do that. You have to remain disciplined. For example, in our case in Fortuna, we made an acquisition, not in silver, but in gold in 2016, in what was a really bad market for precious metals. And we decided to go ahead with the construction. But we were having a long-term view. We were being, in a way, counter-cyclical with respect to when we develop assets. And so we've been building a mine through a bad market with the expectation that when things turn around, we have the production and the metal to deliver to the market. And that is what we're doing today. That's why Fortuna's performance year to date is, 56% in terms of share performance, I mean, when the GDX is up 18%, right? So that is, you have to be disciplined. You have to be counter-cyclical. Today, everybody and their dog is trying to find or discover or develop a silver mine or a gold mine. Yeah. The timing to deliver that is years, with the permitting, the financing, the construction. And construction in an industry full of bottlenecks where everybody's trying to build a mine at the same time in an industry where there is not enough experienced people. You know, the supply chains get squeezed. You have to be counter-cyclical. You have to be doing your homework when no one is paying a lot of attention, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, especially because we hear perhaps more so on the gold side, and perhaps you could comment on the degree to which this is the case with silver. But in gold, we hear a lot about how there's not enough gold, especially for some of the larger companies. So, if the price does, especially if the price continues to rise, that many expect consolidation. Do you see a similar dynamic in silver like that?
The issue with silver is scarcity, right? There is a scarcity of assets, scarcity of meaningful silver mining companies, right? So if you make in the silver space three consolidations, three, four consolidations, three, four companies coming together, you basically consolidated most of the meaningful silver production of the world, or private silver production of the world, or primary
Yeah.
silver production of the world. No, it's silver. Finding a primary silver asset, that's really a rare commodity out there, right? So I think M&A in a market like this, you're likely to see more activity on gold and silver. And yes, I think what you'll see is probably more activity on the exploration side, or acquisitions of new developers, or exploration companies in the silver space, than active M&A with the larger producers. No, I mean, you can see one, but it's a much smaller universe than gold, right?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And you touched on this a little bit before, but I thought it was interesting where, especially over this last 10 years, where we've seen the price fall a lot of the commodity, but I guess the benefit, it's really has forced companies that want to exist and stay in business to be more disciplined. And it's, I think as a whole, a lot of the companies are now in better shape. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think that if we look at the status of the treasuries and strength of balance sheet across the board, I don't think you see a lot of distress. But the fact is that capital has become readily available over the last year to the industry, and in quantities that has fully, helped strengthen those balance sheets. I think the question is how we deploy that capital, and where do we find ourselves at some point in the future when the cycle turns, because it will turn. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know if it's going to be in a year or five, or
No.
I don't know that. I leave that up to our investors to elaborate on. That's for them to find out, because I have to be operating mines every day. No, I cannot come in and out of the market. We're here every day, so we're eternal bulls, right? Uh, but usually what we see in the industry, and I've been here long enough to see that happen over and over, is that if we lose the discipline and we started deploying capital, and we start deploying capital to questionable assets at a time where frothy money is available to fund all of this, when prices come back again, drop, we might find the companies that lost that discipline in trouble, right? So I think it's a time for us responsible for capital allocation, and for investors to really be inquisitive on company strategy, and watchful for company discipline on the execution of that strategy.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning how it really is a capital intensive business where, regardless of the price, you still need money to go out and find these commodities, which reminds me that obviously we've had not as much interest in the mining sector as the price has been lower. And recently I saw Silver Institute, their numbers, they're expecting a 318 million ounce deficit in silver this year between the demand and the shutdowns in the mines. So I'm curious, as one of the people who's going to be counted on to fill that void, where's that silver going to come from?
And that's really the big argument for higher silver prices. Again, a good silver mine is truly a scarce commodity, right? For example, in Fortuna, we're very much committed to silver, but our latest acquisition has been in the gold space because we saw a good opportunity for a good business, and more than focused on silver, Fortuna is focused on good business, right? But we continue hunting for those quality silver assets, but those need to be discovered, right? And I believe that at a time like this, where exploration budgets are being beefed up and you see far more activity, we'll start to see more of those discoveries come. But it takes years to go from discovery to production. It takes years.
Yeah, that certainly is true. And I was listening to another one of your interviews earlier today, and I found it was interesting. You mentioned how, I forget the date of it, but it was a while back. And you mentioned you have projects at $19 or $20 silver that get turned back on. So would it be correct to say that in addition to having the time lag of starting a new project, that there are projects out there that can be turned on to increase production, but is going to require a higher price? Would that be a good way of looking at it?
Yes, there are a few of those. Absolutely, there are a few of those that you can bring back to life, if you will, at a higher price environment. For example, we at one of our mines have some silver zones that require silver to be steady above $20 in order for us to consider bringing them back into production. So yes, we see that on those opportunities. But I don't believe those opportunities are meaningful enough on the global sense to fill the kind of gaps that you mentioned. I don't see it. And probably that gap will continue to increase because here the driver is financial demand. And the way, we are seeing the world today, I believe that interest in precious metals will continue to grow, and with that, sustain higher prices for the near future at the very least.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, where the driver can often be what happens with the financial demand, because yes, there's that industry consumption, which takes a large chunk. But what people like me have always wondered is that if you finally have investment demand kick in, and especially this year, while the price went down to $12, we have a bullion dealer who comes on the show every week, and people were just consistently buying. Even a couple of weeks ago, I would say, he said over the last week he had 231 orders, and 4 of them were people selling. So perhaps if you could expand on that a little bit, just of how that works with the investment demand, and do you think that would be more the driver of eventually forcing, not that we know whether the price gets forced one way or the other, but if that retail and investor demand continues, is that what could really make a difference?
I fully subscribe to that idea. That's the dynamics of this market. And just to share with you, back in 2011, 2010, we travel and we meet with shareholders and potential investors all the time. And in those days, bankers would take us around, financial centers like London or New York or Boston, and we would meet new names all the time, no, new, probably more mainstream financial managers, fund managers, no, large institutions, mid-sized institutions, financial institutions that really were not invested in the sector, but all of a sudden they had an appetite for it. No, these are probably guys that invest in more mainstream investment, but they were forced to start putting money into precious metals just by looking at the returns that they were providing, right?
Yeah.
And then in 2012, that disappeared. We've been meeting with the same old faces since 2012 all the way to now. It's just the same precious metals focused institutions, investors that just have a commitment to the sector every day, right? In every market. So for the longest time, we were meeting with the same faces. And starting this year, perhaps late last year, that dynamic has changed. We're seeing new faces, new interest from small investors, mid-sized institutions, and some very large institutions as well, trying to take trying to come into a sector that's new to them and participate. So we see that at all scales, right? The retail investor trying to find a bit of a safety net to all this uncertainty on the financial markets, on the world with the pandemic, and that replicates at all levels. Right?
Yeah, it sure is interesting to see how that's changed this year, unlike I've ever seen in the time that I've been studying this. And Jorge, perhaps could you give people an overview if they are hearing about Fortuna for the first time? Just let them know, you touched on it a little bit, but if you could give a profile of what you guys are doing and really who that appeals to and what type of investor is going to want to consider that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Fortuna, we're a 15-year-old company. We operate 3 mines. 2 are silver mines, and one, our newest mine, is a pure gold mine. So we operate in Mexico, in the southern state of Oaxaca, or the San Jose mine. San Jose ranks among the 13 largest primary silver producers in the world. It's a great asset, a low-cost operation, produces between 7 and 8 million ounces of silver every year, plus some 50,000 ounces of gold every year, at very competitive costs. Our all-in sustaining cost has traditionally been, between $9 and $11 all-in sustaining, depending what we're doing with investments. It's a great performing asset. It's a corner asset for the company, cornerstone asset. In Peru, we operate a historic silver producer. It's called the Cayoma mine. It's a mine that it tells the Peruvian history. It's part of the narrative of Peruvian history since pre-colonial times. It's a mine with an operation history that spans more than 500 years. Truly an amazing deposit. And we operate that mine since 2006. It's today, it has a silver contribution of about 1 million ounces a year, but we have turned it more into a zinc, lead, silver mine. No, but it's an asset that operates with 3-4 years of reserves and has been operating like that for 500 years. Truly an amazing deposit.
Yeah.
It's in the Peruvian highlands at 4,500 meters above sea level. That's close to base camp to climb the Everest, right? So it's up there in the Andes, and it's our first mine. We started Fortuna with that acquisition, and a great performing asset. And our newest mine is a gold mine, not a silver mine. It's in Argentina, in the northern province of Salta, great place for business. It's a large open pit heap leach operation. It's a large open pit heap leach operation. And we are in the ramp up phase of that mine. We're in the ramp up phase of that mine. That mine is set to produce this year about, for 2021, our expectation is around 140,000 ounces of gold at an all-in sustaining cost well below $1,000 per ounce. And it's a large deposit with reserves for over 13 years of operations. So those are our three assets. We are a strong player in the precious metal space in the Americas, and continuing to focus on efficiency, productivity, good execution at the asset level, and always keeping an eye for new opportunities for continued growth in the company.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know there's a lot of people who watch the show who are quite familiar with you. We had one of our regular guests, Dave Kranzler, who is a mining stock newsletter writer and analyst, and he was talking quite fondly about you. So it's great to finally have you on here. And I guess the last question I have for you today, you mentioned that you're fourth generation doing this, and I would love to know, I mean, it's been interesting as I've been learning about the mining stocks. There's a ton to learn. So is there anything you could share with people that's been passed down from the generations that, especially folks who are new to gold and silver and mining, would be well served or good to know about?
This is a hard business, no? Mining is a frontier business. It's a hard business. And you have to be disciplined on the quality of the asset. A mine is like a marriage. You have to be sure, committed, and it's for the long run, right? So, so focus on the quality of the assets, and pay attention to the guys who are going to run that. So an advice to investors is look at the strength of the asset, look at the quality, at the merits of the asset. Look behind the hype, no? Look at the fundamentals of the deposit, and it's a hard business. So who are the people who are going to make it happen? In these days, day and age, gaining social acceptance to develop a project is challenging. Operating, designing, building a mine that can meet the high standards the industry is measured against is challenging as well. Putting together the quality of teams. These are not things that one person does. It's teams, groups. So it's important to know that you have the right people to develop the right assets, right? And I think that's key. So what I learned, I'll share with you that we have lost through years, and we have made some good investments, some investments where we have lost money, and the private level, my grandfather, my father. So I certainly have learned from that, taken my lessons, I learned the ropes, And if I focus on something, it's quality of asset, and look carefully at the people who are going to make it happen. Right?
Well, Jorge, I sure appreciate that. That's a lot of great advice you passed along, especially as people are new and learning about this. Perhaps just in wrapping up, can you give folks the website address one more time, how they can get more information, get on the mailing list if they would like to stay posted?
Yes, the website is Fortuna Silver. .com and info@fortunasilver.com. We can reply to you. You know, we're accessible. We're very accessible to our investors and to our shareholders and interested investors. So through Carlos Vaca, our investor relations manager, you can access information on the company, and I am also available to help address any inquiries as they might come. Yeah.
Well, Jorge, I appreciate that. I think the world is going to be counting on you with a lot of new retail, and just imagine when the institutional folks finally figure out how to spell silver. And with a deficit this year, you're one of the ones we'll be counting on. So it'll be fun to follow your success. And thanks again for joining me here today.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience, Chris.